Hello, everyone. This is Kripa Anand, and welcome to the Canadian SME Small Business Podcast. Today, we are tearing down the smoke and mirrors of traditional advertising to explore high impact creative execution. In 2026, breaking through market noise isn't about chasing one off viral trends or running disjointed ad campaigns. It demands a unified brand ecosystem rooted in strategic clarity, consistency, and raw guts. Joining us today is Danielle McNeill, co founder, partner, and marketing director at Definitely Real. Based in British Columbia, Daniel leads brand strategy and business development for a powerhouse creative agency named one of Adweek's top 10 indie agencies to watch. Her elite client roster features iconic brands like Arc'teryx, Cactus Club Cafe, Nimmo Bay Resort, and the BC Cancer Foundation. So, before further ado, let's welcome this very special guest. Daniel, welcome to the podcast. Such a pleasure to have you with us.
Yeah, Kripa, thank you so much for having me.
Now, Daniel, many small business owners today treat their branding as a final cosmetic finish line, right? Like picking a logo or a color palette right before launch. So, from your extensive experience, please go ahead and educate me and our audience about why should branding come before marketing? Go ahead.
Yes, this is the conversation I have on every discovery call and with every proposal. Because, yeah, we're really big advocates for brand strategy first. And before that, business strategy, but that's a whole other conversation of when
Mhm.
you're coming into this place. But the way we like to look at it is think if you were building a house, you wouldn't pick out the paint before you figured out who was going to help you build the foundation and who was going to help you build everything. What tools do we need? What supplies? You're going to do a lot of research. There's going to be intention behind the build because there's a safety of your family that you need to protect, right? And you want everyone in that house to be safe. So think of your brand strategy as the foundation of your house. It's your values, it's who you are, it's why you do what you do, and like a real why. And in an age that we are in now where content is everywhere and everyone is oversaturated with people selling them stuff, it's more important than ever to understand your why. So that is the brand strategy that comes even before we're picking out color palettes and all that. So you've built this great house. Now you've got the drywall up. And now we get to start picking like what paint, what flooring, what am I going to think about for the next step of the bones? That's now where we're looking at our brand guide, your logos, your color palette, all that. Then we get to expand even further and pick some furniture. And we're really making it our own because your
Hmm.
home is an expression of yourself and your business should feel like the same thing. It should be an expression of who you are and what makes you different. So that's why we firmly believe brand strategy and brand have
Uh-huh.
to come first because marketing is now then think of like, I'm going to throw a great party and I want all my friends to come. So I'm going to have a really great patio with a fire pit and I'm going to have a hot tub and I'm going to have these things that bring people to my home. I've got friends with kids. I'm going to put an awesome playground in the backyard. There's your marketing. And now you're really saying to people, this is who I am. I know who I am. It's living and breathing in this expression of my home. And then here are these extra things I'm going to sprinkle on top to make you want to live in my world with me and want to come
Mhm.
enjoy this space with me. So that's probably the
Wow.
best analogy I could give you on that.
No, definitely. That's one of the best analogies that even I've heard so far. You just make everything sound so fun. And I completely agree with what you've said, Daniel. Spending capital on marketing tactics without an authentic brand core, it means that you are just driving traffic to a business destination that is nowhere for the customer to land, right? So that's great. Now, let's also talk about building a marketing ecosystem instead of chasing short term wins. Specifically in today's day and age, when you open LinkedIn and there's so much happening everywhere, you often ask yourself, am I not doing enough? So, from that perspective, what is the difference between building a brand and just simply chasing campaigns? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think the biggest difference is, we hear the word trend a lot. And through COVID's actually a really great example of
Yeah.
this. Through COVID, you saw many businesses spike. They came out of nowhere. They had something that offered people that moment, something very trendy or something very relatable or something they felt they needed in that moment. But that time passed and a lot of those businesses don't exist anymore. That is trend campaign based marketing. That is a campaign without a brand that lives and breathes as that ecosystem and the human. So
Yeah.
think of the brand ecosystem, and now your marketing ecosystem is really just an extension of that brand. So not everyone should be on Instagram. Not
Hmm.
everyone should be on Pinterest. Not
Right.
everyone should have email campaigns, and not everyone has $20,000 a month to spend on ads, right? So I think that everyone's ecosystem is so unique that we can follow funnel strategies and think of these systems and ways of thinking and ways of selling. But when we again understand who we are, why we do it, we naturally attract people. So when we create that river and like we create this constant flow of confidence, in who you are
Right.
and really selling what you do best. And
Yeah.
then you use those moments to welcome people in. Then we create little waves and we allow for there to be more current happening into your business as much as possible. So I think it's like working from a place of sustainability and constant and having really strong evergreen knowledge of your business and like what do you sell all the time no matter the market, and then being
Mhm.
able to like capitalize on better trending, a cool influencer is doing an awesome dance trend and your intern did it and it got you 100,000 views. Absolutely capitalize, and you will be so much better at it if you know who you are and you've built that ecosystem and all of your tools feed into each other. So your Instagram, your ads, your everything page side of things. Are you doing out of home? Are you doing partnerships? They all have to speak to each other and have a consistent flow into them. So that's really the big difference for me.
Well, thank you so much for that educational context. And again, as you said, treating individual ad campaigns as brief waves that must ride on a continuous river of brand consistency, it prevents you from burning cash on fragmented channels without getting to one core result that you are looking for. Great.
Absolutely.
Let's also now talk about driving growth through creativity and earned attention. Specifically for small businesses, we talked about how they don't have 20,000 budgets for just ads, right? They're counting every penny that is going out of their pocket, and rightly so. From that perspective, how do you suggest small businesses compete through community and word of mouth marketing? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think we see this show up in a few different ways. So, of course, there are the people starting up brands who already have community. So, they
Yeah.
are influencers, they are celebrities, they are creating brands to basically use their
Right.
communities as the launch for that. So that's one way is of course be your own influencer. Be the
Yeah.
person who shows like this is how I'm building the brand. You see that a lot, but it doesn't work for everyone. So the other opportunity is just get out there, like literally go to the street, hand out your product, ask people what they think. Really try to find physical ways to connect with your customers because that will teach you more about your brand and allow you to again go back to that brand strategy and you'll actually find we have clients who often will come to us with a product in a certain audience and an expectation of who they serve, and we find through our process they actually serve someone completely different that they totally overlooked because it wasn't their vision of who needed their product, but they really do in the end. So I think that talking to your community that already exists is so important, and getting to people on that ground floor. The other part of it is finding people with community
Hmm.
who really benefit from your product or service and might want to partner with you. There's different ways to do this. We see a lot of affiliate marketing, of course, that happens a lot where you're able to give people code. That's kind of like the basic level, but we're seeing a lot more equity partnerships happening with brands and influencers and celebrities and things like that. And I think there's a really great opportunity for small businesses there, especially when you don't want to be the talking head of your business who's on
Yeah.
Instagram every day. You're like, I got things to do. So there's that word too, where you could really use somebody else to help spread that word of mouth. And I really, again, I think you are your biggest advocate for your business. The more people who meet you and want to work with you they
Yes.
will help you spread the word. So I always say to people, as a business leader, you need three people in your world. You need a mentor, you need a coach, and you need a cheerleader. And so your mentor is someone who tells you what to do. They help you, they support you. Your coach is someone who listens to you and really will give you direction, but is there to be more your counselor, things like that. And then you need
Right.
cheerleaders. You need people who are talking about you in rooms that you are not in. So your own community, going to events and networking and all that stuff. We're still coming out of the COVID era where a lot of people
Yeah.
want to run their whole businesses behind a screen and using AI and totally tech savvy. But the power of human connection is very much so thriving, and people are desperate for it. And the people who I see succeeding are the ones who are not afraid to say, hey, want to go for coffee? Hey, do you want to try this? Like, so
Right.
I think that's where like a lot of small business
Yeah.
owners really empower themselves more.
Again, a beautiful perspective there, because I agree with you, specifically with now so much noise in the tech space with AI also now there in the picture. Things have changed tremendously, and we'll talk more about that definitely. But before we go any further, here's a special message for all of our listeners, specifically to all the founders, retail directors, and scaling brands watching. In 2026, consumers can spot artificial corporate mirrors from a mile away. Daniel and her team at Definitely Real are completely disrupting the ad space by delivering raw, unfiltered strategy and senior creative leadership that lands with absolute transparency. So, if you are ready to stop wasting your tight marketing budget on single channel gimmicks and start building an unshakable consumer ecosystem, visit definitelyreal.com today. Cut through the smoke and get real about your growth. Coming back to you, Daniel, we mentioned AI. Now let's explore preserving human creativity in the age of AI. So,
Mhm.
with artificial intelligence now in the picture, what risks does it pose to the future of creative talent? And to answer that question, let's do a little time travel. Imagine if I were to give you a time machine right now and we were to go 5 or 10 years into the future. When you get out of the time machine, how do you envision AI changing this industry? Just paint that picture for our audience.
Yeah, I think what we're going to see is actually a lot of younger people who are doing way bigger things than we were at their age. They're going to be way further along than we
Yeah.
were. And even right now, most of the young people we're working with know more about AI and are more cautious about AI
Hmm.
than those of us who are a little bit older. Us elder millennials are like,
Yeah.
they know more than us. So I really do think that this is going to be a superpower for the next generation who uses it properly. I think there will be
Hmm.
those who don't get jobs because there will be less jobs.
Right.
It will be more competitive, especially in the creative spaces where it's going to be really easy to mimic good creative. Like there's
Right.
a big difference between creating content and having a brand content strategy. And there will be people who continue to create content and use AI to do that because the bottom line is the most important thing to their business. And that will work for some. And people will make millions doing that. And that's okay. But there is going to be a whole other echelon of just quality and attention to human detail and care for that. And I do think that we're going to see, 25-year-olds who are like chief creative officers. And we're going to see, yeah, like young
Yep.
people running really big roles, especially in creative and marketing, because they didn't sacrifice the process. They learned the process and they used AI. I always say to our team, AI is a coworker. It is not here to do your work. You would never go to your coworker and say, here's my work today. Could you do that? I'll come back later. That's insane.
Right.
So I think that there'll be some folks who use AI to do their work, and there
Hmm.
will be folks who use it as a superpower. So that's really what I see coming.
Wow, this is one of the best answers I've heard for this question so far, specifically from this creative perspective. I'm loving this conversation today, Daniel, and definitely I'd love for you to be back, hopefully for an in-person episode that I'd want to do next with you.
Yes, please.
But for now, before we come to the last segment,
Mhm.
one question before I, ask you the final advice for our listeners. As women in business specifically, we often walk into rooms where, you know, there's a lot of male dominance in the rooms, right? So from that perspective, how exactly do you manage yourself or your thoughts, or how do you make a seat for yourself? Because I say this all the time, women have stopped asking for a seat at the table, they are creating their own tables now, right? So what's your perspective on that?
Yeah, I think that's pretty bang on. Is like we're not really asking; we're just
Not
kind
at
of
all,
showing
right? Yeah.
which is great. And I think that Alexis and I have really, my business partner and I have really just made sure that we don't undervalue ourselves in any way, and we don't put any sort of cap on what we could do. We're both musicians. We both have fronted bands. That's how we met. Was actually
No way.
so I think we also both have a bit of a blind confidence that, that allows us to kind of, in the same way that we write albums and expose ourselves to the world with our music and
Wow.
our art, right? It has kind of the same kind of blind confidence. And we were down at South by last year, it was, and we saw the gal who was one of the founders of the app Partiful. And I'm sorry, her name is evading me right now, but she's phenomenal. She did a panel and she was talking about how when they built that app, they were in New York, they were not in Silicon Valley. So
Okay.
they just did it on their own terms, and they did it their own way, and they weren't worried about how other people were building apps or funding or any of this stuff. They just did it as a group of friends who wanted to do it for fun, and it blew up. And that's what made it special, was that they didn't have the rules that everyone else was playing by, and that actually not knowing the rules was their superpower. So we
Right.
feel very similarly, where it's like we don't have the old boys club mentality. We don't have any of that. We can build this house as we want it. And, as business owners, we're in year 6, and not every year was like that. There were years where we did feel we had to build someone else's house, and we had to run a business the way businesses are quote unquote run. And it's
Yeah.
taken us to fall on our face quite a few times to realize that, like, no, nobody can tell you what to do. And as women, we just have we have deeper empathy. We have deeper care. We have deeper attention to detail. And those are things that have been so undervalued for so, so long, that I think it's really our time. And the proof's in the pudding. Look at the numbers of the Fortune 500 companies in the world, and the number of women in the C-suite, and how that is revolutionizing the way some of the biggest businesses in the world are making money.
Yeah.
And I think it's just going to keep going that way. So I think women should just be brazenly confident, and, like, who cares? Let them laugh. Let yourself be cringe. Do whatever,
Yes.
because it's that confidence that we deserve. We should all be as confident as an average man. We should all have at least
That is so
that, if
true.
no
That is
more.
so true.
So yeah,
No, this is you've just hit the nail on its head, right, with that statement. And you're a rock star. And
right back
so
at
much
you.
more power to you. I'm genuinely so inspired by everything that you've done so far, and I'm sure so are our listeners as well. So let's get Daniel back for an in studio episode the next. But for now, before we let you go, Daniel, if there's one final piece of advice that you have for our listeners today, specifically who are afraid to stand out, or don't know where to take their marketing direction from now, if you could whisper one thing into their ears, what would you say and why?
The best businesses are failing every day because they're not afraid to fail, and they're willing to take creative risk and try things over and over and over. So I think for all small business owners, the number one skill we have to have is quick recovery time, and the ability to say, oh, that sucked. That meeting with my accountant was hard. But instead of dwelling about that and staying up all night crunching numbers, I'm going to go to that networking event, and I'm going to meet 20 people in the next week, and I'm going to send 150 emails, and I'm going to do these things. And I think that's what makes you an entrepreneur, is this recovery that we can just turn and burn. We can be like, okay, moving on, back on the horse, let's go. So I think that that's probably the number one thing, is just like fail fast, recover quick, and keep moving. Because if you continue to do that, if you build that brand strategy, if you know who you are and what you sell, and it has real value to you, you can't fail. You just can't.
That is again $1 million advice right there. Daniel, it was such a pleasure having you on the show today. Thank you so much for being here and doing this with us.
Oh, thank you so much, Griffin. This was awesome. I'll definitely be back.
Of course. All right. That was Daniel McNeill from Definitely Real, a masterclass in building a cohesive marketing river, utilizing scrappy local creators to outpunch enterprise budgets, and understanding why human mentorship protects the creative craft in 2026. To all the listeners, thank you so much for tuning in to the Canadian SME Small Business Podcast. Be sure to subscribe and visit CanadianSME.ca for more such resources. To learn more about how we are supporting the ecosystem beyond the platform, please visit the Canadian SME Small Business Foundation at smbfoundation.ca. And lastly, a very special thank you to our partners, UPS, our shipping partner, and ADP, our HR partner, for their ongoing commitment to empowering small businesses across Canada. I'll see you all in the next episode. Kripa Anand signing off.